Hi everyone, I'm Zach Reinhardt, here to review the new Homecomings album, Sale of Broken Dreams. I was going to review the new Kaji Hideki album, The Blue Boy, but I realized that I don't have the patience to actually listen to such a boring album and come up with any thoughts in my brain. So, despite the fact that this new Homecomings album is going on a month old, and I usually like to appear hip and with the times, I'm gonna make a sacrifice and review this album for you. So, the Homecomings are a pretty typical sounding indie pop band. Their sound is really typical of a kind of whole scene of bands, including like the Hearsays and Lady Flash and Dayglow. They create very tightly packaged, easy to listen to, very catchy pop songs that are kind of driven by a slightly distorted guitar and have a very strong focus on vocals. They have a female vocalist, and all their lyrics are in English. This is their second album, following up their debut Somehow, Somewhere from 2014. And if you've heard that album, you've kind of heard this album. Not much has changed on the old Homecomings front. But despite that, and despite the fact that, to a degree, a lot of these songs just kind of sound the same, I find that I really quite enjoy this album. This thing kicks off with the song Theme from Sale of Broken Dreams, and by the title, we can kind of assume that this is the mission statement of this album. It starts off with some very kind of dreamy, picked guitar chords over top of kind of ethereal sounds in the background. And this kind of I think 3-part vocal harmony comes in and does this very pretty kind of slow moving melody over top. And then by the end, a little keyboard or synth comes in and plays a little melody and plays the song out. And it's just overall very pretty. And it transitions very nicely into the next track, Alphabet Floating in Bed, which is a very easygoing, just indie pop track. It's got some glockenspiel kind of plinking in the background, and it's got a decent chorus. And this song is kind of the most typical Homecomings track that I could imagine. It's like if you took all of the Homecomings music that they've released so far and like averaged it. Alphabet Floating in Bed is kind of what you'll get. But it's a decent track, and my only real complaint with it is the drums are kind of lackluster. They don't really have any feeling to them, and to a large degree, I feel like this is the fault of the production. The drums are produced very cleanly to just kind of fit into the song. And maybe this is just my prejudice of wanting every single band to sound like Number Girl, but bad drums are kind of a pet peeve of mine. And I think it was Buddy Rich who said, a average band with a great drummer is a great band, but a great band with an average drummer is an average band. And that quote rings true here, and unfortunately, that quote rings true through the whole album almost. But I can say that the rest of the instrumentation and the songwriting do a good job of making up for the shortcomings of the drums and the very, very clean production, which is made readily apparent on the next track, Hurts, which is one of the better tracks on the whole album. This song has a very simple, strummed, guitar-driven kind of chord progression to it. The melody is very catchy, both on the verse and the chorus. And the chorus is just killer. It really picks up on the chorus. And overall, the song's intensity kind of builds and falls very nicely and very naturally throughout the length of the track. It's a very good track. And now I've described to you three songs, and I kind of feel like I've described the whole album. There are slower tracks, there are faster tracks, but overall, really, all of these songs can be described as very easy on the ears, very guitar driven, very accessible, catchy, just indie pop rock tracks. The only real outlier on the whole track listing is track 6, maybe some other time, which is a kind of lo fi acoustic song. It's just guitar and vocals, and the production is much more kind of gritty on this. Like, it's not as cleanly produced and not as cleanly recorded, which is a nice little change of pace halfway through the album, as this is 13 tracks long. But I feel like it's probably the worst track on here as well. It's just a little too long for what it's doing. It doesn't really explore much room, really, or like, it's not a very big musical idea. I feel like it would have been better if it was like 2.5 minutes or something. But it's over 4 minutes long, and I feel like it overstays its welcome a little bit. But given that that's the worst track, it's still not really that bad. And I don't really feel like there's a bad track on this whole album. All these songs kind of fall at least along this kind of baseline quality that is carried throughout the whole album. And then you just get the occasional track that peaks far above this baseline. And at an hour long, I would normally think that this would get a little tiresome, but I find that there is just enough kind of diversity in the songwriting and a very consistent quality to all of the songs that I'm not really bothered by the length of the album, and I'm not really bothered by any of the more longer-winded tracks like Lights, which reaches past the 6-minute mark. I could criticize that all of the songs kind of sound alike to a certain degree, but once again, I find that there's enough diversity to where that doesn't really bother me. And it's also like all the songs are really quite good, and I could just pick any of the songs and have a good time listening to them. And I feel like that's hard to do on an hour of very kind of similar sounding indie pop. The thing is very well written, and I like the performances a lot as well. And there are, like I mentioned, some peaks in quality here. The song Perfect Sounds Forever is one of my favorites. It's just very succinct, it's very well written and tightly packaged. There's not really any wasted time in it. And it's also one of the songs that has a bit more kind of punch to the drums. There's a bit more presence there. And the chorus is just killer. She hits this really kind of like loud high note that just makes me want to shout and sing along with it. It's a very catchy song. I've been humming it over the weekend while I've been listening to this thing. And yeah, I really like that track. I also really like the closer, Baseball Sunset, which is another acoustic track, but it goes over a lot better than maybe some other time, as it is just more succinctly written. It doesn't waste as much time. And also, the melody is just incredibly catchy. I love the chorus on this thing. It reminds me a bit of Jens Lekman, the way the chord progression goes. And also, there's a little bit of kind of like Beatlesy, happy indie kind of vocal melody stuff going on that I like a lot. And it's a very simple song to learn on guitar. I've been strumming it around the house on my acoustic. It's a very fun song, and it closes out the album very well. And I mean, really, there's not a whole lot else to say. This album carries a very consistent quality to it from front to back, and there's not a huge amount to complain about other than I think the drums are a little lackluster. So yeah, I'm feeling a 7 out of 10. I like this thing a lot. I've been listening to it a lot over the past few weeks since it came out, and yeah, looking forward to whatever the Homecomings do next. They're a very consistently solid quality group. Yeah, so that's me. New Homecomings album, Sale of Broken Dreams. Check it out. It's pretty good.